My name is Dustin Peters. This is my Army story.
Dustin Peters. Welcome to the show, brother.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good,
Uh,
man. How are you? Thank you for taking time out of your day to knock out this podcast, dude.
yeah, no problem. I've been looking forward to it, and I think what you're doing is awesome. And I think getting the story of the regular veterans, the regular guys that were fighting GWAT. I think it's awesome. I think telling regular stories is going to help a lot of guys who feel
Yeah,
maybe a little left behind, or maybe that they don't feel like theirs matters, and switch. Maybe they feel like that to that point of feeling that their service doesn't matter as much, which is not the case. I mean, everyone, most of the fighting really was done by regular guys that were on the street. So
yeah. What? You're the second person that kind of told me they felt kind of left behind, and I feel like that too, man. I feel like especially with I don't know what other social media platforms you're on, but definitely like the podcast world is dominated by soft, right? Like the Navy SEALs, the Green
mm,
Berets, and then like I know Instagram dudes love dressing up like if they're part of that community, and they just sit around do Excel spreadsheets all day. And why do you think that people feel kind of left behind about that?
well, I think like war stories, right? So people, they it's like a movie, right? You see a movie. If you had made a movie about most of the time that I spent in Iraq or Afghanistan, you would fall asleep because
Yeah,
90% of it's boring. You're
right.
driving to this place to go to some sort of key leader engagement meeting with your platoon leader, and then you gotta set security or whatever, right? And so
Hmm.
it's a lot of it's boring, and there is some times where it's not. It's boring. It's not, and the sexier missions, right? That what military guys would call sexier missions would be like these raids. We did those, but it wasn't the same maybe as some of the other guys. And plus, just the name alone, right? If you're like, I was a Navy SEAL, people are gonna pay attention to you. If you're like, I was, whatever your job was. If you're, and some stories, make it, and then some don't. And I think like I said, there's just um so many stories, so many um people paying attention to it. And it to me, and I don't like when we talk about it and stuff. I just want to put it out there. I don't try to badmouth any of the soft guys or any of these guys that go on the podcast. To me, it feels like a revolving door, though. If you go on
Yeah,
one, you're going to go on the next, you're going to go on the next, you're going to go on the next, and you tell it. So I've heard the same story from the same,
yeah,
10 guys over and over, which is awesome. I mean, their stories matter, and they did some awesome things, and they did for the war. But same time, just regular guys, feel like, well, I was out there doing things too, and not just to seem selfish, just to tell the regular guy's story, um, is important. Um,
yeah.
y-
No, dude, you're absolutely right, man. I felt the same way. Like, obviously I subscribe to the Sean Ryan platform, and they've done great things, right? Everybody has done their part. And like you said, I feel like it's a revolving door. They did a raid and then they come back. And then like us, we had to do missions, for hours on end, and then come back and get shot at guard or something. You know what I mean? Like you're in a
mhm.
firefight, and then there's just so much things that go on a deployment more than just wearing quad nods and going to go take out a terrorist. You know what I mean? And my friend, he said the same. He said it best. He's like, the same guys that killed those guys are the same ones that are going to kill you, and they're no different from you. They're just more funded. And I think that's important to highlight too.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, like, I've heard a lot of podcasters and other, some of the big time guys out there talk about it. Navy SEALs get on there because, yeah, they get those missions. They get to go to do the Bin Laden raid and all these different
Yeah,
things. And so they get movies made about them, and they can talk about those kind of things. And so people want to hear it. And so I
yeah,
think they get around. They get around. And then,
for sure.
it's, yeah, like I said, it gets most of what we do isn't that's sexy. Like, besides maybe that documentary they made, Restrepo, that came out
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
a while back. It's been probably 20 years ago almost now
yeah, yeah,
since
yeah.
then Stat was out. But yeah, that was what it was. I mean, for a lot of people, not everyone, but in Afghanistan. And um, I recently watched Warfare. It was Navy
Yeah,
SEALs, and
yeah.
that like hit me. I didn't expect that. I was like, oh, it was another movie about Iraq, right? And it was
Right.
pretty. I was like, oh, that's pretty. A lot more accurate. But People want to make those movies about seals. They don't necessarily want to make it, and I like to see that change. Some of the best war movies, really, I feel like, are about the underdog, the other people. The
Yeah,
guys
yeah,
that
yeah.
stormed, Normandy, or the what about the medic that was um,
Desmond Doss.
yeah, Desmond Doss. He was like the medic that, you don't want to fight the war, but he's like, well, I'm going to go because this is what I think I need to do. But I know I don't really want to fight people. I want to help people, which is, admirable thing. And those stories make it. But how many stories you think from that same units didn't make it? They don't make it. So it just
Yeah,
depends. But to give a platform to guys that um, were out there and that they have good stories, I think is good. Just
yeah,
I read a book not that long ago of letters basically that were sent from different wars. So like World War One, Two, Vietnam, Korea, stuff like that. And they were just letters, just a book full of regular stories, basically, from
uh-huh,
regular dudes that were just out, doing their thing, doing what they thought was to defend their country,
right.
or fight for their country at least, go fight
Yeah,
for the war that their
yeah. Like
generation was
today,
called to.
like if you think about it, today, 21 years ago, the Operation Phantom Fury happened, and that was fought by conventional dudes, man. And it's the bloodiest war in the GWAT, battle in the GWAT. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I have a couple guys that I've had on that were in the battle, Fallujah too, and dude, it's incredible, man. Hearing the resolve from human beings, man. Like, just dude, like just sure fighting, dude. Like just a bunch of people, right? Not this particular battle, but I only highlighted today because it happened 21 years ago today. But like, it's
Mm.
crazy, like what the human being will do, and it's not really for like the bigger military, right? Like you're talking about like the army or the Marines or something. Like you're doing it for the guys left and right most of the time, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that kind of goes to why people talk about, why do you fight? Why did you go to a war? In hindsight, maybe we shouldn't have been to. And I'm not here to
Yeah,
get
yeah,
into the politics of all that, but that's hindsight. You didn't know, right? You're just like, hey, this is what the military said we're gonna do. So if you were there in the early days,
mhm,
anybody that was somewhat of an adult or an older teenager remembers 9/11, remembers that feeling that the country had on the 12th.
right.
Everybody remembers. And then for people to like talk bad on regular guys, it's like, or like somehow call them these names, like they were out, like we were out in villages in Iraq or Afghanistan, just like pillaging and stuff. Like,
Yeah,
bro, we weren't
yeah,
like doing anything. We were doing the best we could.
yeah,
Like I never fired my rifle at just indiscriminately. That wasn't how
yeah,
that works. Like we weren't.
absolutely.
I think they think they see movies from, and then they think that's how it is, and it's like, okay, well, I don't know. I wasn't in Vietnam. I wasn't in Korea. Nothing like that. I
Hmm.
don't, I don't know what they did, but we were not definitely weren't doing just shooting at people indiscriminate.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
Especially not in like you weren't going in villages and just wreaking havoc and stealing and doing God knows what. Like it was not like that. We were, in my opinion, we were doing the best we could in the most professional manner we could. And
I agree.
sometimes when you have a 20-year-old, it doesn't always go as well as now that I'm 41 now, and when I first went to war I was like 19 or something. Like
Yeah, me too.
that 19-year-old version of me is definitely different than the 41 version
Yeah.
41-year-old version of myself. So yeah, it's more to it. There's more nuance than people want to address, and I think that's been a hard problem for a lot of people, and it's gotten better. I mean, I remember you were talking about Phantom Fury. I was on leave actually when right around that time. My unit, some people went, and it was mostly Marines, First Infantry Division. There was a lot of other guys that went to fight. They don't really talk about it as much. I feel like that battle turned into what the Pacific was. Is that
Hmm.
more Army soldiers fought in the Pacific than Marines? But
Yeah,
it's a Marine-led kind of thing, which is fine. Like I'm not trying to debate or kick them
yeah,
off that at all. Like, because they definitely put the work in, and so that's definitely not my position at all. But um, so I was on leave or whatever, and I didn't really and when things like that happen, you're so close to things going on. It's like you don't see them until later, right? You're like, oh man, they just did this big, crazy operation. I heard about. Especially when you're there, you don't like, especially like in those days. You didn't have like social media. I was in Iraq 2004, and yeah, we didn't have like like social media. It barely had internet. Like you could order Amazon, it might come in 6 months, like kind
yeah,
of thing. Like you didn't know. So you heard about the contractors getting hung from the bridge, and I knew that things were bad, but we were fighting it. And I was in Taji at the time, like we'd seen it. They were, um, later kind of the trope for a lot of things was like, oh, when you've been in theater a long time and the rocket alarms go off, you didn't, you just like, okay, I'm just gonna roll over and go to sleep. You didn't do that in Taji back in those days because they were hitting bunkers, they were hitting people in showers, they were, they had a lot of spotters before we really could, we kind of like, well, maybe we should watch the local nationals and what they bring on the fob because they bring cell phones and they call in again these strikes and hitting helicopters hitting. There's a lady hit, and I never really know her or anything like that. So it just happened when the phone was on. Was taking a shower, and when they just brought those metal shower trailers in, and they hit the shower trailer, and wounded a couple of people and killed a couple others. And so when the rocket alarms and the things went off, you got up, you ran to the bunker because you know that they're gonna hit. They're trying to hit you. It's not just
Yeah.
like in the streaming. I was in, years, maybe 10 years almost later, in 2011 or 12. I was in Bagram, and that place is huge. So it was a different
Yeah.
story. Still a whole different story of when the rockets come to. They were like, well, most of the rockets don't actually get close to anybody. They're just kind of way over there, and so you're like, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
But when I was in the same deployment in Shinwar when we were in Afghanistan, they would hit they'd hit hit inside, and they'd hit vehicles, they'd hit stuff like that. I don't remember them ever actually hurting anybody, but yeah, I mean they would shoot, and so you kind of like, well, let me just pay attention to this a little bit more. So situations depending or whatever, but
Right. So so let's get started on your backstory, man. Where are you from originally?
so my family is originally from Minnesota. I was born in Tulsa, Oklahoma. My
Oh,
dad
okay.
had moved down there for a job and lived there for some years. And then my family, when from Europe, way back when, right, were farmers, dairy farmers, and all the way until the '90s, they were dairy farmers. And so um, when farming kind of was going, sideways in the '80s and in the early '90s, the farming was going away. My dad had decided to do something different, and so. Um, we moved to Oklahoma when I was before I was born, and then I was born there, and then we moved back to Minnesota for a couple of years, and then my dad finished school and was like, well, I guess farming's not going to work. So I lived there. I lived in South Dakota for a few years. My dad trying to figure out kind of helping farmers and worked at a co-op, and then eventually my dad settled working for Walmart, and we moved to Northwest Arkansas, and that's kind of where my family mostly lives now. It's around Bentonville area, Bentonville Rogers
Okay.
kind of. So that's what I call home. I don't live there.
Yeah.
I live in Colorado. I live in Colorado, but that's we can talk about why how I got
Yeah.
here later. But that's kind of where I grew up. I grew up in a Midwest family, of farming and that kind of lifestyle. Definitely a conservative American middle class, maybe lower middle class, but just kind of a good to live. And definitely talking with people. My childhood was more like the '70s. Like we just ran around like you just kind of the kid. You got to. There was no like. You didn't worry about something like kidnapping. You knew everybody, and so
Yeah.
it was a
Yeah.
pretty feral childhood. It was nice.
So you graduated high school in Arkansas. Like, did you? Was it hard for you? I mean, I don't know how young you were. Was it hard moving from Oklahoma to Arkansas?
I had moved around a lot. My dad took us a few different jobs, and um, working for farmers that you don't really know. Like, so my dad definitely experienced a lot of turmoil with trying to take the experience that he had, and then his college experience, and then try to lead people through it. Which they worked for a co-op in South Dakota for I think like 6 or 7 years when I was a kid. Probably 8 to uh, I was like as a young teen, maybe like 12 or something. I don't know. For six, I don't know, a few years. We lived there, and I remember him being a kid like that being hard on him because old farmers don't want to listen to you. So
Yeah.
it wasn't too bad. By the time I lived in Arkansas, I'd been used to moving around. I probably lived in like three places by that point. I was like, so Arkansas was definitely different. It's a southern state, and so living in like the Midwest and living in those places is totally different.
Yeah.
You met a different demographic of people. I'd never really been around much diversity. Just a bunch of mostly white people farming, and there's some
Yeah.
Hispanic. I think there's some Hispanic people, right? My dad's best friend was Hispanic, and it's that kind of stuff. You see that, but as far as like most of the things that you see and like to say, I never experienced that until I lived in Arkansas, and then it was
Mhm.
different. And so coming from an outside, I was like, well, that's kind of different. But I did that for a few years, and then I was off into the military. So um,
Well, what made you want to join the military?
so I knew that. I'd watched my both my parents struggle with student debt and said that's not something I'm going to do. So I'm going to figure out
Okay.
some other way to do this. And so I had gotten a scholarship through some church organizations going to the thing, but I got in some trouble, and it's kind of a long story. I don't really feel like getting into, but I ended up in a boys' home for a little while, and when I was 16, and so when I got out of there, and I didn't know what to do, and I'd really done really well in school, so I couldn't go back to regular school, having like a violent, well, somewhat having a pass, the colored pass in my teens. They were like, yeah, you can't go to regular school. So I went to an alternative school, and but my transcript was well. And they're like, well, you have all the credits to graduate. Do you want? And I was just kind of over. I'm like, okay. And so I kind of became my dad said, hey, well, you're either going to go to school, community college, something like that. So you're gonna have to take out all this money. And I was like, no, I'm not doing that. So he's like, well, the National Guard will help you. And I was like, okay, I'll do that. So I went and talked to a recruiter. This is the spring of 2001, I guess. Maybe like April or something, March, April when I got out of there. And so when I talked to I talked to him, like, yeah, I'm doing the National Guard or whatever. But I told the recruiter that I didn't really want to be in the National Guard, but I thought that was the only way at 17 my dad was going to sign the papers is that I could do this part time. So
Okay.
after my dad signed the paper, I was up to my recruiter, which was he was like 20 something, maybe like 22 or something. And I was like, hey, I don't really want to do that. I just want whatever job you can give me and get me out of here, I'll do that. I just want to get some college money, see like some experience. He's like, hey, I can get you a job, and like want to go to Korea. I was like, sounds cool to me, let's go to Korea.
Yeah.
So I was like, I go to Korea, I never been there, I get to experience some of the that's to me that's what the military was. There wasn't like a war in my mind going on. It definitely wasn't, no one knew 9/11 was going to happen. It definitely didn't know anything, so I just took whatever job they would give me, and the job they gave me was an ammunition specialist, they called it. I was like, okay, whatever, I don't care what you have me do, I'll just go do that. And because if there were a war, I'd have signed up for the infantry right away. But if there's not, like,
Right.
I don't really care. Like if they had offered me that to leave right away, I'd have done that as well. But I didn't. I honestly didn't care at the time. I said I just don't. I just want to do something fun. He's like, it'll be fun. You'll have fun. Okay, cool. So that's kind of my story of me joining. Kind of the story of that is that I got to leave, and and I didn't even tell my parents. My dad had signed the paperwork. My parents had gotten divorced a few years before that, and so mostly my dad, and I was like, kind of told him in the last minute, hey, hey, I changed my mind. I'm just gonna go in the active army for a couple of years, and he was like, okay, I guess. And he had so much going on at the time. I have a special needs younger sister, and she took up a lot of the time those days. And she still does, but especially in those days. And so he just didn't really care, I think, at that point, and was like, okay, whatever, just you're gonna
Yeah.
leave, and I don't have to deal with you anymore. Because
Okay, so let me see, make sure I'm getting you right here. So spring of 2001, you were 17, went to go join up with the National Guard. How long? So they told you can be ammo supply, right?
yeah,
There's no war going on. I probably would have done the same thing. Like I don't want to join if nothing really actiony was going on. So then, like, when you from how long from there did you leave to basic training or boot camp, whatever you want to call it?
I left um May 21st or second, something like that.
Damn.
Like my day that I actually like did all my stuff and was in reception was I remember like the 24th of May 2001
Yeah.
was like the day. I remember like being like, okay, this is the day, here we are. And I spent like a week or so in reception. I did that, did basic, started like right around the 1st of June.
Mm-hmm.
um and then I graduated, just regular basic training, and then I graduated, went to Redstone Arsenal. That's where they train. So they do EOD. So the school that I did is like the beginning of EOD. So there's there's like half the students there, or a lot less, are there to do EOD. So it's like a prep course. You learn all this stuff. You learn a lot of stuff. You learn how to like categorize ammo, like look at it, all the different numbers that are in all the different things. A ton of stuff, right? And you learn how to like
Yeah.
blow up some ammo. You get to do some. It's actually way cooler than I thought it would be. I thought it would just be kind of like you think of supply, you're like, oh, it's gonna bring bullets, so that like somehow I didn't really know. I didn't honestly have no idea. It didn't. I was a dumb kid. I didn't realize any of that. I didn't care. I was like, I don't care what the army. I was thinking about like what you do after work. I'm gonna end up in Korea. This is gonna be cool, right? That's gonna be like cool things to see or whatever. I didn't think anything about. I didn't have any really reference to it. Not anybody in my family that had military service ever talked about it. They didn't, you know,
Yeah.
and they have, you know, like I had like an uncle that was in Vietnam, but really not there was too much military service that I knew of like them. So I didn't have any reference. I just like, oh, I'm just gonna join the army and there's no war. I'm just gonna go and do this for a couple of years, kind of, and then I'll just be 21 or whatever. I'll go have some college money and I'll get out.
Yeah.
That was
So
my mindset.
how did you enjoy basic training? Because I know you said that like you got into some trouble and everything like that, and it was kind of like, hey, you're going to community college, but you're like, nah, I'm gonna go join the National Guard real quick. How did you? Were you like, kind of like a fit kid or no? Or like how did you
Um,
enjoy it?
I didn't. It wasn't bad after like spending the better part of a year in like a boys' home and living on a ranch in Arkansas. It's called the Arkansas Baptist Boys Ranch. Good organization. Time I didn't know how good of an organization. It definitely saved my future. I definitely learned a lot and changed the way I thought being there. Um, so being basic training, but going back to your question, going basic training was just another thing, like another little deal I had to do. Really, it wasn't that bad. It's definitely different than people probably experience now. Like a lot of yelling, a lot of, but but the point I was pretty used to like most of the people that worked at that ranch were former military guys, Vietnam, a lot of Vietnam guys, and so like there was yelling and you got in trouble for those petty things, and so by the time I got to basic, I was like, yeah, well, this is another thing. Like I can hold my breath for a few months, right? Like basically, it's kind of how my thought process was, and it wasn't. I didn't find it to be super hard. I was generally in shape. I wasn't like fat or anything like that. I could run. I think push-ups probably the hardest problem. Back in those days, they have a whole different APFT now. Like back in those days, you just did push-ups and sit-ups and ran a little bit, and so like that's probably the hardest. Is I was kind of a scrawny kid. I was like 150 pounds or whatever back then, and I could probably do 15 push-ups when I joined the army.
Yeah.
So I was like struggling that. I could do 100 sit-ups. I think I did my first 2 mile in like 15 minutes, 14, 15 minutes. So like it was like whatever. But
So
push-ups, yeah, I like struggled.
do you kind of feel like so okay, so let's say let's fast forward a little bit. So you do go through the ammo training, right, and everything like that, and you get done, like right, you're officially like a soldier.
Mhm.
How long is that until 9/11 happens?
9/11 happened when I was in my AIT.
Oh,
So I was
what
in
was it
AIT.
like?
Um, well, first off, I didn't know the World Trade Center really was. I'm
Okay.
from like a small town in the middle of
Yeah.
the country. I didn't they like I just remember like so back then they like the drill sergeants they weren't like as mean as basic training drill sergeants, the AIT guys or whatever. I remember my drill sergeant's name was Drill Sergeant Short. And he was not short and he was a very stocky black man. He was awesome, awesome leader. And he I remember like we like done PT. It's been like about nine or so. I think that 9 o'clock in the morning or whatever when they first kind of heard about it, and he said he came out and he was pretty level-headed person, but he was strict, but he wasn't. And he was like, "You get your self in here. Like we gotta come into the day room." And so different than base training. So those base trainings like have like a one big building kind of thing. In AIT, like they have the barracks was a little bit away, it's a few blocks from where the company would have been, where your training
Mm-hmm.
was. And so I was
Hmm.
walking back from eating chow and doing all that kind of BSing at this point. I've been in the AIT for a little while. I was usually treated pretty chill for the most part. They get into your butt. But it wasn't too bad. Especially when you were in formation. So it was off to me that people were acting though. I was like, what is going on? Right. And then there was like the military police everywhere, and you could tell something had happened. And I was like, I don't really get it, but I didn't know anything, no idea
Yeah.
what's going on. So I walk into the day room, and everybody's face was like something really bad had happened. And they were like, hey, somebody ran a plane, and this is like kind of in between this before the second plane had hit. I walked in right about the time that they had the news on and the second plane hit. And so I was like, they were like, hey, something happened in New York. We're not really sure. And there was a few people. There's some guy, this Puerto Rican kid that I was in school with. I don't remember his name. That was like super upset. And if you know anybody from New York, like they were upset, and he knew what was going on. Like he had some people that I guess that worked there. I don't really. That's a long time ago. I don't remember exactly. I remember his name, but he was upset, and I had no idea. And so I was like, "What are you just talking? Like somebody ran a plane?" And at the time, if you remember, They thought it was like a little plane. They didn't know what had happened. Like no,
Yeah.
because no one wasn't paying attention to it, right? So then
Right.
the second plane hit, and then they knew, and then everything changed from then. People were like, "Hey, we're going to go to war," um, and so I was like, "Okay," but I didn't really they process it. It took a few days to probably
Right.
maybe a couple of weeks to really figure out what happened, what was going to happen next. Um, and all that kind of stuff. I know that they canceled pretty much right after that. They say, "Hey, if you had orders to somewhere, you're not going there." The army has paused everything. We're locking everything down. Instead of getting to go out, because like at this point at AIT, if you go to a regular MOS of AIT, like you're like in later phases, like you could go out, maybe to the mall on a Saturday or something like that, or you could
Right.
go see a movie, something like that. It's kind of a little chill. And that all stopped. Everything in the place was completely shut down. Um, You could go on, you could get a taxi cab back in those days. There was nobody at the gate really. There may have been like one MP, but there wasn't like checking IDs and all that kind of stuff like they do now. There
Yeah.
was just kind of driving on, especially on that base. There wasn't a lot going on. And so all that changed, right? So all of a sudden now you can't go anywhere, you can't do it like anything. And now we're doing like they set up like checkpoints everywhere, and so you're doing guard, and it was different. Yeah, definitely it was different. For me, for not knowing what any of that was, it was real confusing. I'm a
Right.
young 17-year-old private that knows nothing of the coast. I'd seen Home Alone or something. That was my reference of New York City. Like I don't, what
Yeah.
do I know? I don't know anything. It's not
Yeah.
like there was like the internet or nothing like that back then, so you didn't know
Yeah.
much other
So
than you see on TV. Good.
how was your so okay, so you finished that, right? You guys get done, right? S- Special operations and invades freaking Afghanistan and all that stuff. Like how was your time in the guard? Um
Well, I didn't actually join the guard. Right as
okay.
I was gonna leave, I joined the active army. So, like I said, I was gonna go to Korea. Um, I would say like right around the graduation. That'd have been like in October, maybe like the beginning of October. I think I was like,
Uh-huh.
um, I think that's when it was. I don't remember exactly. It was like, something like that, but being October. I graduated that school. Went on hometown recruiting. Um, they had reassigned me orders. I got orders to go to Hawaii
Oh,
instead of
okay.
Korea. So I was going to go out there. I didn't even know much. I mean, I honestly didn't. I didn't know anything. I was so dumb, and there wasn't a lot of information. Like I tried to access information at the time, like when I was at school, to like figure out like what. But I didn't know like a starting. Like you don't know anything. You don't know a start. You don't have a starting point, let alone to be able to like figure out any of these things. Like I figured out, okay, the Korea. This is what units are in Korea. This is what they're doing. Cool. Okay. There's probably going to be around tanks or something. That's what I thought.
Right.
But then going to Hawaii, um, I remember the flight. This had been like end of October, I guess.
Yeah.
The flight to Hawaii, no one was on it. Like five Hawaiians and me. Like there was no one on like a seven, like a full size airplane flying
Yeah.
from, I think I flew from like Dallas or something to Hawaii, and there was no one on. I remember like laying in the seats thinking like this is crazy, and then like,
Yeah.
but I said it didn't really even. It didn't. I didn't get it. I didn't wasn't. I didn't watch the
It
news.
didn't like process in your head like what's really going on, right?
Yeah, like to understand like that people wouldn't want to fly and all that. I didn't know. Like, and once they shut the TV off in AIT, I didn't like have a cell phone. It wasn't like
Right.
Facebook. There wasn't none of that stuff. So once they turned it off, like I didn't have a cell. I mean, I didn't have a cell phone until I don't even 2004 or something. Well, maybe 2003. I had like a prepaid cell phone because they were
Yeah.
like, "Hey, we have to get a hold of you somehow." And so I like, okay, well, I got a prepaid cell phone with like one of those little SIM cards. As if you
Mhm.
need to get a hold of me, but it didn't do anything. It wasn't special. Like, I think people don't. If you didn't live in those days, like my kids have no idea. I tell them all the time, like my cell phone didn't do things. They're like, what? They're like, yeah, that cell phone, but I don't know. I just would carry it in my pocket or whatever, and it didn't do anything. I couldn't even remember text messages. People would just call you
Yeah.
like it was just how it is. But um,
Um, so okay, how does it like? How do you feel like I mean, you probably don't know much about Hawaii, but I mean, you're a kid from Arkansas, like small town USA. Now you're going to the Big Island over here. You're gonna be surrounded by water, you know?
it was amazing. I
Y-
remember, and this is
Yeah.
vivid. Like I can remember like getting off the plane, and if
Hmm.
anybody's flown, you usually get there in. Well, at least for me, I got there in the evening. It's dark. I'd never seen a palm tree. Never smelled the ocean. None of that stuff. I remember like getting off, and if anybody's been to Hawaii, like you get off and like the airport's kind of inside outside. So you like go out to the outside kind of sort of part as you're walking toward the base you claim is. I remember seeing the first palm tree and like touching it and going, this is why I joined the army. Like I wanted to see things. So it was just
Yeah,
so to me it was so
pretty
cool. And then um, get to the there's a little office. There was like a kind of liaison or whatever for the army there. That's
yeah,
gonna
like in
take you to
processing, right?
to in process like, hey, we're gonna take a bus, and then they were like kind of rude, like right. And so I was like, all right, this is the army. I'm back to the army because I spent 2 weeks on hometown recruiting, and
Yeah.
I was chilling and all that. And so I get back and he's like, hey, you're gonna do this. And back then everybody acted that way. It wasn't like, and I don't know how the army is now, but back then like every NCO was kind of a dick. Like you're like, well, and so you kind of got used to it, getting smoked, and all that was just normal private stuff, right? Like so, yeah, I got there. I remember I in process I signed into reception on Schofield, and they're like, all right, so whatever. So I was like, well, I couldn't sleep, right? I'm like super amped up. I'm like, oh, let's go. So I walked around. I remember walking around like Schofield a little bit in the dark at night, and just kind of taking it all in. Um, and then doing it in processing and all that kind of stuff.
So how was the like your what is the tempo of the unit looking like? Because I mean, we really haven't we're not conventionally in war yet. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
like, what are you guys doing? As far as like, obviously, people are still going to ranges. I don't know how the funding was obviously back in that time, right before the war started. Like, what's a day to day look like for you guys over there?
So fast forward a little bit, like so as we get to like I would say like I mean, let's do normal things. I was in an a cav unit, which was like which was funny because that's kind of why how I, like they had like ground scouts, which what I'd end up being later, and then aviation. So the people that knew back then they had we call it air cav. So they had like the little birds of Kiowa helicopters, and so
Yeah.
what we mostly did was supply ammo for those units. And so I remember I mean, they did gunnery, and they would go out to. We went to females in Hawaii. They've been to PTA, which is a Pakaloa training area. It's up in the mountains, like 6 or 7 thousand feet, I think. And so I spent a lot of time, my first like year or so, um, doing that, and then me trying to get out of that job. Me going, hey, the 9/11 happened, and I didn't want to fight, but now that there's a fight going on, right, I want to do this. Like, let's what job? And so I remember like way before my contract was even close to being up, being talking to the retention person, like, hey, I know I'm like a private and whatever, but I want to out of this job. Like, how do I get in the infantry or something?
Yeah. Yeah.
How do I get to a job where I can go and do the fighting? Like, so this is what I want to do. And so
Right.
um, that but day to day, yeah, it was just like taking ammo to ranges, and back then what you would do is go to they call the ASP, which is the ammo supply point, which is like big
Yep.
place where all the bunkers and where the ammo is stored. You draw ammo for everybody, you take it out to the range,
Hmm.
you sit there with them, they would give you back it. If you go to like say like instead of going to PTA, you go up there, you spend I would spend 2 months at a time up there, which is I mean
Yeah.
to me as a kid I was like I didn't care. I didn't care about like all those like other things. It was cool. I was living in Hawaii. I was getting to do things. It kind of sucked sometimes, but the most of it was pretty chill. Yeah, we
Did
just
you
kind of got.
So you were with this unit when America invaded Iraq. So
Mhm,
how long, so like, you see the invasion of Iraq happening, right? You're still doing the ammo supply thing,
mhm,
and obviously you want to go to combat, right? Like, you want to fight in the war, you want to like actually be the front line, you know? And
yeah.
in 2004, are you deploying as an ammo specialist?
So I in 2003, end of 2003, I re-enlisted to be a 19 Delta.
Okay, cool, cool,
I had
cool.
a slot to go to school. Stop loss happened. If it means a stop loss is, that means it stop everything. And so
Yeah, that's
at
sucks.
that point, I was like training. I was kind of in training to do the new job, and then kind of doing some OJT. And then when we deployed, I ended up doing a little bit of both. I was on did some Dart stuff mostly, but most of the time I just worked.
What is
Um,
Dart?
Dart is a downed aircraft recovery team. So if
Okay.
a Black Hawk or something goes down, you go out, and we didn't really do much of that. And I did combat security. Everybody in my company, everybody knew that's what I didn't want to be in my job, and so I got to do a lot of the other stuff for our. unit um, for the aircraft and all that kind of stuff, and I got to do some fun things. But my focus was on getting out of that job because that's not like I said. Once the war kicked off, I was like, dang, I wish I would have just waited around, like because there was if I had waited like another month or so to basically to like the middle of summer, I could have joined and been in the infantry, and that's kind of so I kind
Yeah,
of the whole time like kicking my butt, like man, I wish I had just waited. But you're a young kid, and my home situation
just
coming out of
eager.
that place was not good, and so I was like, I had to get out of there.
Yeah. So when you get to Iraq 2004, man, like how do you feel? Because like we just invaded, May, roughly around that time, I think. No, we ended it in May, Iraq. A
Yeah,
couple months later, we go back around the end of 2003. So like you're a young specialist. You're getting into Iraq. How do you feel like where you're about to go do?
um, so it had been like a year. So they invaded in March of 2003.
Hmm.
So we were the biggest. So this is the biggest switch of units since World War II, I think they had said. And there's like the biggest operation they had done as far as like uh um replacing units. So I remember we drove our equipment. So we get to Kuwait. This is like the end of like maybe like December, or early January of 2000, between 2003 and 2004. And yeah, like we get our equipment and start getting stuff ready, and I'm on a gun truck, so I'm a gunner on a Humvee, um, and we're gonna escort all the equipment for the brigade that we were attached to, and
Yeah.
everybody that every this huge unit. We're gonna go up, and we're gonna go up to. So we drive. We
What are y'all driving?
I was in a Humvee, so I was in like a soft skin Humvee with no doors.
Oof, man, we're
So we
we're
had
we're
no,
talking some early days, dude.
yeah, we had no doors. They put like sandbags in the floor, and we had like some
Yeah,
flak vests. I remember we got to the Kuwait border in Iraq, right? Kuwait Iraq border, which is like pretty fortified, right? And we didn't have SAPI plates. We didn't have plates on our vests, and there was people coming from I think First Armored or somebody like that were dropping them off at the this big like staging area they had, right? There's a big staging area, so we're up there. We're like kind of sleeping in the dirt for a few days. Um, and we have fuel trucks and ammo trucks, and we have gun, like Humvees with guns, and
yeah,
we have all that, everything, like all the supply, everything that's gonna go up to for the replacement, right? And our mission is to get to Baghdad, so we're gonna go to Bayap, which, if anybody doesn't know, it's called Baghdad International Airport. This is like I said, like early, maybe late 2003, early 2004, probably like early 2004 about this point. And we get like, I remember like, hey, I'm on in the gun, and I don't have like I don't have a shield. There's no like sides. There's nothing. Right. I have a 50 cal sitting up in the turret. I'm standing up there with zero protection. There's no doors on our Humvees. I mean, this is
dude.
like before even like hillbilly armor
Yeah.
came out. There's nothing. We have nothing. Nothing is
dude,
bulletproof.
dude, this is
Nothing. Not
it's
my.
such an army thing to do, man. Hey, you know what? Let's get this private. We'll put them up there. Just say
Yeah.
bang bang, dude. We'll get it through, dude.
So we like get there, and they like, hey, and
I just want to hop on here real quick and give a quick shout out to our sponsor, Craig Fleming at Fleming's Cleaning. Go ahead and use code word GWAT13 for your next commercial or residential cleaning. If you're in the San Antonio area, please hit him up. It's fall, it's dusty. Let's get your house or your commercial property clean. If you haven't done so, please go ahead and subscribe to our channel, share this content, like, and hit that notification bell. Follow us on all major socials: Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram. We're also on Spotify. So if you like to listen to podcasts on the road, go ahead and check us out over there. And with that, let's continue the episode.
I hadn't done like so. I hadn't like shot at AT4 or done that stuff for a while, right? They didn't train us on. We didn't go to like, and like we later deployments. You go to like NTC, go to JRTC, go somewhere to do like a big training
Gunneries.
mission. We did
Yeah.
nothing. Then I was like, hey, we're gonna go. I remember going to like, we went to Louisiana to JRTC like in 2003 at some point, 2002
Uh-huh.
maybe, and that was the last train like we did really. Other than we went to like nothing really. So we didn't do a big train up like they do
You
later,
guys didn't do
right?
like a company gunnery or anything like that? Like,
Nothing. We
no shit.
did. There was like, hey, we're gonna go. We didn't really even know. They had told us they were gonna go. I remember like they given us the DCU, so the desert camo,
Yeah, those are
and
sick, dude.
like yeah, we got the like, and they're like, yeah, we're gonna do this thing. So, and I was just mad because I was like, I'm supposed to be going to Fort Knox to go to AIT. Like I don't want to do this job. Like I don't want to be here with you guys. I want to go, and I want to be going to fight in a war. And I really didn't want to go to Iraq. I'll be honest with you. I kind of got in a little bit, I won't say trouble. I definitely got in some hot water about going like, what are we doing in Iraq? Like, why aren't we going to Afghanistan? Bin Laden's not in Iraq. What are we
Right.
doing? I remember like that conversation, and my platoon sergeant were like, you know, like shut your mouth, like kind of thing, right?
Right.
Like if you want to get yourself in real trouble, like keep talking. And I'm like, all right. But yeah, it was not a good. It wasn't a good thing. And so like, so you're saying like, so we, anyway, we get to like this big staging area, um, on the border, and I remember like then they're like, hey, here's an AT4. Do you gonna put up in your turret? I'm like, I hope I remember how to use this. Here's some hand grenades. Here's some things. I'm like, I need all this. Like we're like getting all the ammo, and it was different, right? And then I was like, hey, so do I get plates or I know that's this vest. Like when I first joined, right? So when I first got to my first anybody, military, like you get to the first where they issue your CIF, your central issuing facility. They gave us like the old flak vest. Didn't put there's no plates for it. It's just old vest. And you never wore it. Right? You had that and like the old LBV or whatever they called it, like the old like Vietnam
Yeah.
stuff, like green stuff, like jungle boots, all these things because 25th had never done anything. They hadn't been anywhere since Vietnam. So they were just
Right.
like, yeah, we go to Hawaii, we sit on the beach, we drink Mai Tais and all that kind of stuff. Like
Yeah.
it was totally different, right? And
Okay.
so getting to like the border, like, yeah, like, getting all this stuff, like it was definitely an army thing, like, oh no, we have this thing. And then we stayed there for the night and I remember like going over the border and seeing like you go through these gates and there's all this Constantine wire and there's all this stuff, right? And then if anybody's been to Kuwait, understands like Kuwait's like Dubai, like there's like Lamborghinis, it's super nice. You get to
Right.
cross the border, it's not nice. You have trucks with one headlight, and they don't know. It's like driving. If you've ever been to Mexico, like if you're like in San Diego and then you go to like into Mexico a little ways, it's like different, right? Not to be bad on Mexico, 'cause I love Mexico, but it's different. You definitely see a different demographic, like like it's just different.
Different
So
way of
that's
life.
how, yeah, for sure. Like where there's poverty is a total different thing and different in other countries that people that live in America that never lived anywhere outside the United States don't know. They don't know what real poverty looks like. And
Yeah.
so you see some of that, right? You going over it. So you're getting into Iraq, that's kind of what we did. Anyway, go ahead.
And so you guys are running so what do you guys are running ammo up and down to the different areas and stuff like that. Like when do you realize like, hey, shit, I'm in Iraq?
As soon as we crossed the border, like I almost shot the first person. This is like the first thing I was like, we go over the border, and this car like comes veering at us, and like we had a in training, and they're like, in Kuwait, saying like, hey, if this is people are gonna try to do suicide bombing you guys, right? There's like the big thing they had told us before we went in was the vehicles that are acting irregular, and then the the whole idea that there would be like piano wire under bridges. That was like that's what I remember from training. If I remember anything from those
Yeah.
days, is that they were like, "Hey, you gotta." So we had these like pieces of like a post that they cut like a little notch into to like try to cut wire in front of you. I remember that. Like, but besides that, like, yeah. So I was nervous, right? Like, I don't know what war is like. None of us in my platoon, none of us had any sort of combat experience. What do we know about any of this? So
Yeah,
we're like going
absolutely.
over the thing, like, and it's like, okay. And so we like drive over the border and like, yeah, vehicle is like super confused. And and the bridge, so there's like a bridge that goes over like a main highway. That's like what they end up calling Tampa. And so there's not an off ramp. They never fixed it. They never finished it. So there's like a bridge that goes over. You kind of had to like drive on the side of this hill that's like on a major overpass instead of there being like an off ramp. So I remember like going on that, and there was the car that was confused about what was going on. Um, and me getting really nervous and kind of pointing my weapon at him, like, "Hey, what the
Yeah.
heck's going on?" And my potential, like, "Hey, chill out, dude. Like, I think we're good, right?" I'm like, "Okay."
Yeah.
And then for a day or so, we didn't see anything. Like, it was kind of weird because you're like driving, and it's all been cleared, everything's secure, and anybody remembers like the Iraq and like the southern part was nothing, right? It was chill comparatively to like what northern and central Iraq have been
Right.
turned into. And so you're like driving, and I remember like stopping to like use the rest, like pee or whatever. And like there's like people coming, "Hey, you want to take a picture with my camel?" Like, what? Like, we're gonna shoot you, bro. Like, we think we're in a war, and they're chilling. I think that's like the
Yeah.
biggest distinction of what people don't understand about all that is that like people are living their day lives, even at that point, right? Like a war happens, the regular people are like, well, this is kind of my life and whatever. And especially if there's not really real war happening, there's no conflict, there's no like
Yeah,
militia, there's nothing like that happening, right? To
yeah,
us, we're like, it's World War II. We're going in here to like, storm the beaches, and the rest of
yeah.
it, like this is our first time, and the people that live there are like, chill out, like, and they're just trying to hustle some pictures with camels. So,
Yeah. So when you get so how far like north are y'all pushing?
we pushed to Baghdad International Airport, so it's just
Okay.
in town in Baghdad.
And that's where y'all dropped off all the supplies, and that's what you guys are doing
And
from Kuwait to Baghdad, like back and
yeah, and
forth, or what?
that's where my unit stopped initially. So everybody kind of stayed there. And then we would eventually so eventually, initially, we got attached to First Armored, and so we were in Baghdad. We were in Al Maria, which is like a little like uh, borough or district or whatever in Baghdad. It's like right outside the airport, and we would do some like patrol kind of stuff in there. We didn't really do a lot. I kind of hung out in there.
Yeah.
In the beginning, we didn't really do a lot. We were then in the airport, and we controlled the whole entire airport at that point. And so later on, it would change. But in that time frame, from we controlled the entire airport. And so we lived, and there was a place called Bob Hope dining facility. Is kind of where George Bush, after like the invasion, and all that stuff. That was like one of the things he came right around the same time I was there. I remember like they're like, "Hey, you can't eat lunch today. The president's here or whatever." And I was like, "Son of a bitch, I don't like this guy." And I didn't know, like I wasn't a political like politics aren't like now. Where it's like pop culture, right? So it's like, you're like, son of a, like I just wanted to eat some
Hey,
food
you just
because
want a hot meal, dude. You're like, dude,
yeah,
come
and,
on.
and there was like women that were. I was like, I just want to see some like some skirt and just like eat some food kind of thing, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
so, like and in my first job there was women that like later when I was my other job there wasn't females in the
yeah,
cat like much in my other job at the beginning. Now there's totally different obviously, but back those days like there was a don't ask don't tell, and there was no women in the combat arms. And so um we had a few ladies, and if they watched us, like, hey, good looking at the time, just wanted to see some different ladies, right?
Um, so
No,
so how are you feeling being in war and you're not direct action, right? Like
yeah,
do you still want to go Cav? Because I know you said you didn't want to go to Iraq, but like do you still want to go Cav? You know what I mean?
100% at the time. Yeah, yeah, for sure. I definitely wanted to, and I remember like we said, we go out and do convoy security, and we'd protect, and so we could see a lot of things. And not long after we got there, like we would go out. We got some up armored vehicles because we were the IED threat. And I remember like when IEDs really became like a thing. Like we were out still in our soft skin, and at this point, I got a different. So with a different. So I had a platoon of like ammo, what they call 3-5, which is class 3 and class 5, which is fuel and ammo. And I had a platoon there, and then I also was doing the security and other jobs. So they didn't really need me, and so they're like, "Hey, you can do this. I know it's what you want to do."
Yeah.
And I'm a very outspoken person, so I'm like, I'll jump on like, I don't care, whatever you guys want me to do, let's go do that. And so I do that, like, um, and the guy that I was in the truck with, like, his name was his sergeant first class at the time. He was Sutton. His name was. He was like a ranger tab, and then it was a scout. He's like somebody I looked up to at the time. I was like, yeah, man, I really want to do this. So he kind of kept me motivated. He's a good NCO, probably one of the better NCOs that I ever served. Um, he was awesome. So I always had my mind was focused on that. Like, I just got to get through this deployment, see as much as I can. It is what it is. Um, and really, like, the fighting, right? We talk about Fanta Fury, and we talk about some things, and Tales of Four was bad, Solder City and things like that. It was
Yeah,
bad.
it was, yeah.
But it really wasn't until after the first elections, which it would have happened like towards the end of and kind of like the unit that replaced this, that happened, where people felt disenfranchised and the insurgency really grew.
Right.
But anyway, so I finished that deployment. I did just kept my mind focused on it, and with the stop loss, people had said, "Hey, well, you're not going to get what you got out of your contract." And I said, yeah, I am. I don't care what you like. You're going to get so annoyed with me coming up here bothering you. You're either going to check me out of the army or you're going to send me to my job. Like, I'm not doing
Yeah.
this for like I'm not sitting here in this job I don't want to do anymore." But I worked
Um,
there. And when I wasn't on doing combat security, I worked at a FARP. They call it. It's a Ford Army
yeah,
Refuel Point where they fuel the helicopters. So that was fun. I
right,
got to like fuel Blackhawks and Chinooks and so I could hang out with that kind of stuff, watching movies. It's fun.
yeah. So when you finally reclass as Cav, right? You go to your first duty station, and obviously it's a completely different ball game. Like you got like I was because I was a medic, I was a live medic, right, with the infantry, and then I also went to the Apache unit with 125 ARB, so I know the difference. I know how
That's-
I know how you're about to feel. So like
yeah.
when you first get to the unit, man, like what when do you know you're gonna go back to Iraq?
Pretty quickly. If I can back up just a little bit, like I just want to tell this one thing, like going back and reclassing and doing the whole thing, like I basically had to start AIT, like school over, right? Like,
Right,
and it's kind of already covered. Like the army isn't very organized, and people have been there, right? So I go to Fort Knox, and I'm like in Fort Knox doing, and I'm thinking I'm just gonna join and do AIT. I joined in like week 3 of basic training, so I basically did all of boot camp over again, and it was different, but I was treated differently. I had a combat patch for this point, and so people treated me differently. But to
right,
your point, so I get this. I guess when I left Hawaii, I knew I was going to go to Fort Knox and go to be a what do you call it, insert, and I'm going to reclass, and then I'm going to Fort Drum. And I didn't know anything about Fort Drum, and I only owned shorts. I owned one pair of pants, and I'm about to go to Fort. If anybody knows what Fort Drum is, it's like Canada, basically. Like half of Canada is actually south of that there,
yeah,
and so where the population is, excuse me. And so it's cold, and so I get there, and it's October. This is like 2005, I guess. And I spent most of that, summer in Fort Knox, and I had a blast doing that. Um, you definitely get treated a lot different. So I get there and I'm like, I remember the first day, like I go through like reception again. I get there, I get it. Like I've been through this before. I'm a combat veteran. I got a patch, so everybody treats you totally different. I get to my unit and yeah, it's a lot different. It's a lot
yeah.
different.
Well,
It's night and day different between being in the aviation unit and then being in
yeah,
essentially. And this is like when risk was like essentially like the CAV had always for a long time had been basically aviation, and they had dismantled that, and then they became out with these things called the Arista squadrons, and they were basically like the another infantry battalion, right? Just like infantry and scouts mixed together, and so it was a lot different for everyone.
yeah. So what is so you get there '05, like what time '05? Like what month?
It was October. Is it starting to get cold
Okay, so
in
October
Fort Drum?
'05, and then you guys are going to Iraq in '06, like probably like what? Probably like June maybe?
Yeah, we left July, like the middle of July, if I remember.
Yeah.
I think so.
So
Yeah.
and you're a specialist, you got some time in the army. Like what are you what are your NCOs and what are you telling like the other soldiers like, hey, this is what Iraq is like, you know what I mean? Obviously, like you didn't do the front line, but now you have the experience of being in the
Yeah, yeah.
country, being away, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. So I got to my unit. I got there in October. And the way things worked back then is I had enough time to like, hey, you have to you're gonna get promoted. I'm like,
Okay, cool.
so I'm like, okay. So like November 1st of 2005, I got promoted to sergeant. And I'm
Oh
like,
wow.
I just I'm like, this is not, and people were upset about that. I remember like a lot of people were like, well, you just reclassed this job. Like, how do you have why do you think you should do this? I'm like, I'm in the army, bro. What are you talking about? Like, it's not my choice. They said, here you are. And so I like remember I got there, they were in gunnery in October. I get there, I go right to the field. I do like they put me on KP, which like kitchen pro, like wash dishes in the
Yeah, it sucks.
cold. It was terrible. I was like it was like cold, and I had just gotten there and like and I remember then they're like and then my first one was like, hey, you're getting promoted to sergeant when you get back. I'm like, oh, okay. And so everybody wanted me to fail that, and so
Yeah. Got
they like
haters.
put me, yeah, they were upset. So I remember they had this lieutenant. I was in and he hated me, I think, and he just wanted, I don't know, his whole thing. And so they put me like I remember going on funeral detail, and I went to Boston for like a month and a half, and I did like me and his one dude. He got cancer from the burn pits and died. But anyway, but this guy, so his name is Specials Knight. He was awesome. So we were in Boston for like a month and a half, and they think I'm gonna fail. And so they're like, "Hey, if you come back from this thing and you mess it up, we're gonna demote you." Well, I get like a letter from a family saying how amazing that we did, right?
Right.
And I get like a coin from like the vice chief of staff and all sorts of things that go on, right? And so like, they're like, oh my goodness. So then I get moved to another platoon because I like kind of was like, hey, my PTO and platoon sergeant don't like me. Can I move? And so they moved me to from second to first. And so then I do WLC or PLDC, I think they call it the time, which is later, like the sergeant's course, right? I do that and we train up. We go to NTC, and then we go to Iraq. And I've been telling my guys like, hey, Iraq is it's hot. It's it's gonna be a lot of fighting and stuff like that, and there had been a lot of fighting, right? So Phantom Fury had happened, and I said, and I didn't really pay attention to it. At this point I started to really pay attention to politics, really tried to pay attention to like what was going on there, um and really getting a feel for um all that kind of stuff. And so by the time I went there I knew what was going on. So we deploy. We're in Kuwait in the summer, hot, getting ready, and then we go up into we fly. At this point, they stop driving. We fly into Baghdad. We're in the Baghdad airport now. At this point, I think they'd kind of stopped. They given like the commercial side of the airport back to the Iraqis. And so there's some weird kind of conflict with that. Like, so it's like parts of it are base for soldiers, and then parts of it's um, like a civilian side of an airport with like maintenance, and then there's like the terminal and all that kind of stuff. But it's definitely
Hmm.
different. It's definitely different deployment. Um, and we would go into which is called. So we were patrolling. Our unit would take over Second Brigade, 10th Mountain, which
Hmm.
is the hat that I'm wearing. We would take over a place called the Triangle of Death, which was Mahmadiyya,
Yeah.
Yusufiyya, Lutafiyya area.
Yeah.
It is the Sunni triangle, and we would see a lot more than any other deployment that I'd ever been on.
So okay, so let's kind of get into it, man. Like, okay, so '06, it's a pretty hot time to be in Iraq, and
For
I know
sure.
you mentioned the Triangle Death, Sunni Triangle. It's been mentioned a few times on here. Um, so you're a young sergeant, leading troops in a battle, man, and w- man, like obviously this is a way different. Like, oh shit, this is hitting me. This is Iraq War. You know what I mean? Moment. And how are you? How are you dealing with being a young leader and leading these troops there?
It was a learning curve, and people let me know that I didn't know what I was doing. A lot. I had some good NCOs and said some not so good NCOs, and then NCOs that I definitely didn't like, and then later would you know. So I had an NCO, a staff sergeant. That was my I'm not sure what's going on. Sorry.
No, you're good.
Um, that's weird. Anyway, so I had this NCO. His name was Sergeant Perone. I've talked to him in a long time, but he's from Queens. He's a hard dude. He would definitely wasn't a yeller at you, but he would definitely make you feel and question yourself. So leading young men into that time frame was different. I definitely wasn't very sure of myself. I was nervous. And we were getting it wasn't so much small arms contact, but there was IEDs all the time, everywhere. Everything was bombed. Everything was
Yeah,
rigged up with some sort of ID. It was probably the scariest time because like I could shoot backwards if you shoot at me. If you put a bomb in the road, and we drive over that area where you put the bomb in the road for a month, and we don't know, and then one day the road blows up on us, and I'm talking about just a little bit of a road, but the whole entire road blows up, and there's a tank-sized hole in the ground.
yeah,
Yeah, it's scary. It's probably the scariest feeling. It's the most like unsettling feeling you'll ever have in your
yeah.
life.
I'd rather get shot at.
For sure.
So, yeah.
All day. All day. I can shoot
Um,
back. I can hide behind something. You can't hide when the road blows up. There's no one to like talk about it. There's just you find like a cord from like a vacuum cleaner in the road. You're
yeah,
like, well, shit.
yeah. And what are you guys rolling around in? Like, are you guys doing like patrols, or are you guys doing like convoy operations for like presidents, or what?
We were doing a little bit of both. So we call they called battle space owners. So
Oh,
I
okay,
was in
yeah,
a unit in Charlie Troop, First Squadron, 89th Cavalry. Was first platoon, and so we're at this point we're like we're rolling around like we're doing patrols. We own some space in the place of Mustafar, and can't remember. There's a couple of little villages. We were like in the kind of in the country. We had optics, so as the cav, like they kind of put us in more of the rural area because we can cover way more land than say the infantry, and we're much more comfortable than a lot of the infantry guys. I at least knew at the time, and I know they got a little better, but from a light unit perspective, they didn't really they walk around, so they did the infantry guys they patrol more of the they did in Mamadiya. Used to be in some of the cities for the bigger areas outside that they needed some people to be able to observe more was the cav, and so we patrolled a lot of that, and it was a lot of just presence patrols and going out and doing stuff like dig up caches, um lots of IEDs.
Hmm.
But yeah, a lot of it was just that, like that was just a lot of presence, and getting blown up all the time. Like it seemed
Yeah.
like everywhere we went just getting boom, getting blown, like. But
So like when you say that you get blown up all the time, are you talking about like tire poppers, or are we talking about like
uh
destroyed vehicles, or what?
both.
Uh,
I think the first big idea was my friend showed. He was like, "Yeah, we're like rolling around. We've been at this point like not seeing a lot. A few pop shots. Most of it was like you think something bad is gonna happen. You'd see some ideas, but that first idea when we were all driving down a gravel road and the entire road blows up, like, and I thought they hit like, and everybody we thought we're like, oh man, they must have like the barrel of their 50 cal must have hit those low hanging wires, right? And
yeah,
that blew up the transformer. That's what I thought at first. The first verse, I was like way up front, and it like I'm like looking around, like what the heck? And I'm in a truck, so I'm sitting in like the back seat, and we get out and whatever, and the whole entire front of the truck is gone.
hmm,
And my lieutenant's standing there, and we have this interpreter's like standing there, and he's like, "What the heck has happened?" Right? And so at that point, we realized that we had to get a medevac for my friend, and so one of the soldiers, right? And he was in my section, in my squad or whatever, and so that you just go into that battle drill, right? It's just a battle. If you've been in that like thing, right? The medic, uh, he starts getting things going, right? If you were, you get that, like right? It's like he's getting the 9 line pulled up, he's getting the radios and everything's going on, right? And they medevac him um, back to Baghdad to the green zone where the big hospital is, and we're all just like, okay. And then we're kind of pulling security, like thinking, okay, and in a point, bad things, and we didn't know that nothing was gonna really happen, right? They blow us up, and that's all they want to do. Like they're not really trying to get into a firefight with us in open
yeah,
ground like that. In cities, it's different, but in open ground like that, we had Kiowas on station and Apaches on station like in 5 minutes, so they would have all died. So it
yeah,
was like like they didn't. It wasn't as much of like you get into these like heated battles because you're out in the middle of nowhere, and so they're not trying to fight with you. They know
yeah.
that's not going to go well.
They can't get into gunfights with us. That's why they resulted to IEDs, man. Like that was like the best way they could, like, I guess, incapacitate us. You know what I mean? So
And that's the story of Iraq. And that's where we're like in the city. I'm not saying it didn't happen because sometimes it would, but it wasn't like especially out in those areas. It was ideas, and it was brutal, right? Like those ideas are unforgiving, and it definitely gives you the. And I mean, I still have anxiety today from that. Like I still see them like holy crap, and that was like we're having our 20th anniversary next year. We're gonna get together a bunch of us in San Antonio. So yeah, it's crazy.
mm,
Like
cool.
um, but
So okay, so you're in this deployment for what, like 15 months, a year?
yeah, we did. Yeah, so we are there. While we're there, the surge, they announced the surge,
Uh
and
huh.
then they say, "Hey, we're getting extended." So we had no idea, right? We're like, "Oh, next summer we're leaving," right? And so then I would be there. So we got there like in July or something like that, and I would be there until November, basically the 1st of November. I think I
Yeah.
landed back, or right, maybe like the 31st with that, um, back in Fort Drum. So I'd be there for a while.
Yeah. How do you so when you're coming to the end of the deployment, like, you feel like you've earned the respect of the other NCOs? Because I know you kind of said that it went kind of rough for you in the beginning, got promoted out of, reclassing. Do you feel like you made it to hey, I'm actual team leader now. Like I did the, you know what I mean? I led troops.
Yes and no. I think to a point, I know I learned a lot,
Okay.
and I really wouldn't realize how much I learned until I go to my next unit,
Uh-huh.
um, and then they would see, they'd be like, "Oh man, you know a lot," and um, 15 months. I mean, you're doing it every day.
Yeah,
I mean, we're kicking down doors, we're raiding houses. We did a lot. Like we did a lot. We set up during that deployment. We did a lot of stuff. I mean, the whole like Sunni kind of revolution thing happened with the in El Anbar, where they started to like calm down like after the
hmm
battle in Fallujah. Like they had really, and so we'd done a lot. Like we'd set up these what they call the Iraqi volunteers, that we called it, right. So it was different. So I learned a lot and didn't realize it. So, and the biggest mistake that I think I ever did, right, was leave that unit. If I would have stayed in that unit, I would have gone a lot further because I would have had that like respect and that I didn't realize I had at the time. And I kind of started to realize as I was like getting to ready to process. Um, and I was like, man, I really should have stayed here.
Yeah.
Um,
So okay, so you finished your '07 to '06 '07 deployment, and you've been in the army like 6 years now.
mhm.
Reclassed, 2 combat tours, and do you want to continue? Like, obviously, you continue staying in the army or no?
So what happened was that I didn't. And so I got out of the army. I said, like, especially a friend of mine was killed in Baghdad. I don't really want to talk that much about this, but a friend of mine was killed um, during that deployment, and I was really upset. And that was kind of when they were like, "Hey, you want to re-enlist?" I was like, "No, I don't want to re-enlist. You guys are crazy. Like, this is what is happening. Like, like." And that's the first time that combat had hit home, and I knew somebody personally that was killed, and I was like, "This is not for me, and I want to go home." And so
Yeah,
that was the other mistake, right? Getting out and leaving that unit was the biggest mistake because I would have been I would have been a staff sergeant within a few months. I would have been probably sergeant first class within a couple of years after that, and it would have been a lot different. And
yeah,
so that was like the biggest probably thing. So I got out for a couple of months, and I realized it. I got out, and I was out for like a month, and I was like, I don't want to do this. I hate being a civilian, and I went right back in there. Like they pretty much were like letting everybody back in, and so I was like, hey, I'm private service. I want to be in. 30 days later, I was back in the army.
yeah.
It
It, it
was.
it takes a lot, man. What you just said about your friend dying, that you know personally, because like it happened to me, and it's rough for people that don't know what it's like to be in a war zone. So I say this because there is like obviously there's a distinction, right? You got combat veteran and then you got veterans, right? Like because there's people that go over there and they have way different experiences than us guys on the line. And when you lose somebody, it's really tough because like you really can't cope, you can't do anything. You kind of just got to keep going because the mission doesn't stop. You know what I mean? And
Mm,
it's really hard to deal with, you know. So I can understand like your frustrations with the military, you know.
yeah, I was very frustrated. And I was dumb at the time, and at the time and I never really committed myself, right? Like at this point, I just was like, yeah, I'm just gonna do a little bit more. I'm gonna do a little bit more. Like it's kind
Yeah.
of one of those things, right? Like you're like, well, I'll just do a little bit more. Well, I'll do a little bit more. I
Yeah.
know you're never like a lifer because you just like make fun of those guys. You're like, I'm not gonna be a lifer. Like those guys are losers. Like I'm not doing
Dude,
that. Like
yeah.
these lifers. I'm not a lifer. At the time, I didn't know that's what I wanted to do, right? It was
Mhm.
it took me, and so when I came back in, that's when I was like, okay, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna be in that. Like I don't.
Yeah.
I tried to be out. I worked at like a warehouse for 2 months, and I was like, this place sucks. I don't relate with anybody. I don't know. I just come
Yeah.
from like getting my ass blown up and all that kind of stuff and all these things.
Yeah.
Like I did not fit in.
Yeah, it's
And
hard, dude. I mean, you join the army to do a job and you're actually doing that job in real time. There is
mhm.
nothing gonna compare any job. I don't even care like like people on the outside. There's nothing gonna compare to you actually doing your job that you signed up to do.
Yep. It's different. It's so hard. It's a very yeah. It's definitely something different. And you carry with yourself for forever. Like it took me a long time to realize that it wasn't just the trauma from those days, like that it was all the ideas that was probably more of mother issue that was going on with me. But
Mhm.
back to what you were saying. So yeah, it's a hard thing to deal with. And it was hard for me to deal with and it's sometimes it still is to talk to like regular guys that maybe they didn't get to go to war, they did this or that, and it's like I didn't really talk about benefits. I was just listening to them talk about some of that stuff online. Some article that came out, and the VFW was talking about it, and I was like, they're not thinking veterans that went to wars benefit. This is crazy. Like, okay, and I can't defend those other people, but and I'm sure their service and this and that. I'm not to say anything negative on them, but it's like these guys. We went to war. We went to war with over nothing, and you're gonna try and say that people that get a little bit of money from the VA is are BSing. Like, you don't want to go down that road. Like, you just don't want to do it. Like, they don't. The government is not ready for that.
Yeah.
So I hope they don't. And I don't know. I mean, I'm not to say anything crazy, but yeah, I hope they never go down that road because you're gonna have
Um.
millions of combat veterans upset.
So when you get ready to go back into the army, where's your next duty station?
I went to Fort Hood after that, so I went to be
Oh, the
in the
the
armory.
big calf,
Yeah,
big calf.
yep. So I went to first cow, and I get there, and I got a couple of appointments. I'm a different person than I was, and I coming from light units. And if you've ever been to an armory unit, it's totally different. Again, it's somewhere in between aviation and light units, and but they love me, and so that was awesome. I got there, had this platoon sergeant, his name was Sergeant Hanover, and he's amazing, and I'm freaking loving it because I was in light, and they needed somebody to run there. Like, so they do like a hunter killer teams, they kind of call it. So it's like Humvees and Bradley's fighting
Yeah.
vehicles, and I'm happy. They're like, hey, you're gonna be a section leader, you're gonna do this, so I'm moving up. I'm teaching guys um, how to do, room clearing, and I got all this experience, and I got, you know, a decent amount of combat experience at this point. And,
This
and
is
so
way
yeah, it
different
was,
too, huh? Like
yeah, and
you're feeling way different. Like you're an experienced NCO going to a
yeah,
unit.
I'm like God. That's what I felt like at that point.
Yeah.
That's like weird about it. They treated me a lot different, and I had the knowledge and experience to back it up. So I didn't have
Right.
like the stigma of that had kind of following me around. I felt in that unit, which would have went away. Like I said later, I was thinking like, man, if I just stayed in 10th pound, I would have been that person because all the people that maybe had some issue or whatever would have looked at me differently because now I'm from that deployment. Like I earned my kind of like right, like my worth on that deployment, and that would have
Right.
been different. And a lot of people that maybe didn't like me would have left because pretty much everybody left. There was a couple of people that stayed, and those people liked me. And that like probably kicks my butt the most. But yeah, they're
Yeah.
getting to Fort. I get to Fort Hood. I'm like in a unit called 6-9 CAS, 6 Squadron 9th Cavalry, Bravo Troop. Love it, I'm loving it. I'm not a Bradley person. I do one gunnery. I like destroyed the I don't know halon system inside of the truck because I'm inside of this Bradley, and they're like, "Hey, you're a dismount person." I'm like, "Yep." So they're like, "Hey, you gotta run the Humvee section." So I did
Yeah.
like one little Sparta on a Bradley. I don't know. That's to me is foreign. I'm like, I just like to like give me my gear and let me walk. So, but yeah, Fort Hood was awesome. I liked Fort Hood. And then and I got there, hey, we're going to Iraq. In those days, like you're gonna get a year on, a year off, if you're lucky. And so that's what we knew. I already knew getting there that I was gonna leave. And I had kind of burnt some of that time going home. Um,
So what is it like your '09 deployment compared to the last one you just did? Because the last one was hard, you know. So what was it like?
so going there, I was thinking like, okay, it's gonna be like it was. And so at this point, we had some change in leadership and everything. And so um, I get there, and it's not. And I had a lot of like undealt with trauma. And so we get to a place, we're in Telefar, we're in like this super nice fob. We're like chilling, like at the gym, and we're
The
chilling like
defect.
yeah, like so you're eating nice food, and they have and him has been to that fob like to that to the chow hall there, the defect, right? They have this hot sandwich station, and everybody that I know that's ever been there is talked about this place. And so I'm like, you love the turkey and Swiss, like it's just like this jam, like they've hot sandwiches, and it just I don't know. That was my thing from there. And so my unit, troop gets put on go to a prison called Badouche. And while I'm there, like leading up to that, I'm fine. Like, well, a little bit before that. So we go to NTC. I started having some issues. Like, right. So when I'm in Iraq, in 2006, 2007, a unit called 431, which is a sister battalion, right? They get some guys kidnapped. So they are on an OP, on an overt OP, and Delta Company 431 guys get ambushed and they get taken like hostage, right? And so there's like this 100 air assault missions that were like there was like tons of missions that were going on, not just me but everyone, for a while during that deployment to find these guys. And so that like really was on my mind. And so we're like doing a similar mission, right? So after that, the army's like, hey, we got to like kind of prepare for this. And so we're in NTC before we go to Iraq in '09, and I kind of like have like some. So that's the first time I like seen new flashbacks, and I was like, oh man, this is not good. And then my unit knew, and they're like, hey, you got to go to mental health. And so I'm like, all right. So we got from NTC, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to mental health and see somebody, talk to them about what's going on. And then I'm like, hey, I don't think this is gonna go well. And so I maybe you should like let me stay here and do some treatment, and then I'll meet you guys in theater. And that was not a thing. My unit was not about it. So I was like having some hard time, like, oh, this is not good. Like I gotta
Yeah.
deal with whatever, and I don't know what it is. At this point, I have no idea. I just know that I can't sleep. I'd sleep in few days
Mhm.
and all that. And so anyway, so fast forward, like they're telling me no. I go to
Let me ask you a
Iraq.
question. How do you feel like when your unit tells you no? Like, right? Because you just said late earlier that you like, hey, you felt like they treated you real good. You know what I mean? You're hot shit NCO man, and it's like when they tell you, hey man, you're not gonna we're not gonna worry about your mental health right now. You're gonna go to Iraq again. Like, how do you feel like looking back on it now?
Um, Looking at it now, I kind of get what they were coming from. At the time, I was very upset about it. I
Hmm.
was like, are you guys serious right now? Like you all were just there, right? 6 9's deployment, that the unit that I go to in first cav, they were in a place called Bakuba, and they were in hell on earth. Like it was bad, right? Like they're fighting the Iranians, and it's on the Iranian border, and they're like, I mean, that 6 9 deployment in '06 '07 was bad for them. I mean, it was bad, like the loss of guys, and anybody that knows about that area, that was not good. Like a little bit more connected than the area that I was in, but it was bad. Like pretty much everybody else there in '06 '07 knows that that theater and war during the Iraqi Civil War was bad. There was, we were pulling bodies out of like trenches and canals, and it was bad. Like it was, we saw a lot of shit. If you were to see in the war, it was then. And so for me, I was like, you guys don't know? Like you have all these guys. And there was guys, my platoon sergeant at the time. So Sergeant number left. He became a first sergeant. He left. And this guy that became my platoon sergeant, which is a good friend of mine. I love this guy. His name's Sal. His name Sergeant Salkonovich. We call him Sergeant Sal. He's a Bosnian. He's amazing. I freaking love that dude. But he doesn't get it, right? He doesn't. He's like, bro, I freaking grew up in Bosnia during like all the bad stuff. If anybody remembers the '90s, what happened in Bosnia, and like he was in that. And so our little skirmishes probably didn't mean not much to him. So he's like, bro, like he would tell me like, hey, like we lost all these people in one day back in those days, and I get it. So he saw it worse than I had ever seen. And he didn't understand, and I didn't understand. To be honest with you, I had no idea what was going on and what was going on. They're like, well, there's trauma of PTSD. I'm like, I guess. And so like we'll try to like pinpoint it to things.
Hmm.
And it really wasn't then later until like later that they found that I had TBI that I was like, okay, that's the issue. Because I was like, I don't feel like did you kill people and you feel bad? I'm like, I don't feel bad. Like I didn't kill any like children or anything. I wasn't like out doing savage things like massacring. Like
Yeah.
it wasn't like that. So it's not like I have some like crazy. Oh my goodness, it wasn't like that. So it's like I didn't get it. And later I find out that from my IDs and stuff. But so I was hurt from it. I was upset. I was like, man, I just want to go and do something for a little bit. And let me just like reset and let me try some of this treatment they're gonna put, let me go through or whatever. Um, and they were like, nah, you're gonna do that, you're gonna go. And so I would go and um, there was some stuff, and that '09 deployment was pretty chill. We go to this place called Badouche, and
Hmm.
at this point in my third deployment, and I'm pretty used to it, and I speak some Arabic by that point. I'm hanging out with the Pergmesha, or whatever we call them,
Yeah.
guys up in north, and I'm loving it. I'm chilling. Um, we're not really. There's like nothing going on, so I'm like hanging out watching new movies.
Uh-huh.
And on their like little like bootleg satellites, they're like, "Yeah, we're watching this movie." Like, "Yeah, that's from the '80s, but all right, cool." And they're like, hang out, and they're like, we watch, and there's a prison. They had a prison break at this place called Badouche. It's like right on the outskirts of Mosul, and we're chilling, right? And
Yeah.
then it starts really hitting me, and my medic was like, "Hey, man, I haven't seen you sleep in a while. Like, are you good?" I'm like, "I'm not sure, like, how I'm feeling, like in that." And I remember medic being like the best advocate for me because he could see it. Because he was like up, whatever they would go to guard or whatever he's doing, the thing, and he would see it. He was like definitely checking on me, like, "Hey, man." And we live in this little place, and so we're like sharing like quarters with these soldiers from Misha, and then they're like kind of guarding this place and whatever. And I'm trying to like get through it.
Yeah.
And then my I like kind of bring it up, and my first friend's like, "All right, you're gonna go." And so then I ended up like kicking me out of the unit, and they put me into like the headquarters company, and I ended up back in another place, and then it really started going bad.
Yeah.
Um, and there was a
You
few
know,
things that happened in there, some things, but
what you're saying, like when you finally decompress, right, and your body's not on fight or flight mode, that's when like realizations really start hitting you, right? And
Mhm.
that's important to note here because that's why a lot of people also have struggles I was reading your stuff, like what you call it, a combat fatigue, right? Like you when you finally decompress, it's kind of like, damn, it's all hitting me at one time. Like I'm not on survival mode anymore, you know?
Mhm.
And
Yeah, there's not a pending deployment to go to, and you don't know that you like when you right when you're like, "Hey, I'm gonna go and do this again," and there's like a very like when I got out, like for those 2 months, like it was just like honeymoon, right? I'm home, I'm getting to do whatever I want, I'm chilling, I'm gonna go see like I'm a huge like metal fan, so I got to see some bands play, and I went and did all that and all that. So it's first few months, and then it hit me like, okay, I hate being a civilian. I got to go back. So that's gonna cure my problem, right? That's gonna be the cure all.
yeah,
Then I get back,
yeah,
and there's another honeymoon period of me being back in the army, and I get to yell at people, and I'm like, I remember like platoons are like, "Hey, go out and take the platoon out for PT and like then smoke the shit out of soldiers and just enjoying that, like and just like this is the army to me." So some guys didn't like that, I'm sure, but to me that's the army. Like you're getting yelled at by some young NCO and you're having fun and it kind of sucks, but you're going through sucky things together because that's gonna build camaraderie and that's gonna build the unit for men that are gonna want to fight with next to each other, right? If you don't have
right,
that camaraderie, you're not gonna want to die for this person that's next to you. If you build that, like and that's really what people don't get is like going through like the super crappy crawling through the mud kind of like not literally but like mentally, right, kind of like deal is what makes a unit, right? Having some sort of like logo to be around and then some sort of like crappy situation that you went through together, it makes you go, okay, this is my unit, we're going to go and we're going to go fight and and if I gotta die for this person, I'm gonna die for this person. But if you
yeah,
don't build that, you're not gonna have that. And if you don't have that, how am I supposed to trust you to go to war with me? And so that's what I'm like working for. So all those times I'm like, let's fight, let's do this, let's get our platoon to this point. And then once you get there and you go, wow, this is not what I thought it was gonna be like. This is definitely not what it was.
yeah,
This is like, where's the fighting? At this point, the Iraqis had like the surgeons had given up. They're like, hey, and we had just signed over, like saying like, hey, if we're gonna go through this next like so a year or so, you don't shoot us and we'll leave, kind of thing. And so, um, Al Qaeda, which later become ISIS, right, had laid their weapons down and kind of cooperated with us.
yeah,
And some of that was through like the Iraqi volunteers, and we can get into that whole conversation later. But this whole thing, and so when I'm there, like it started hitting me, right? There was an incident that happened, um, right, and I don't remember the whole incident, so I'm not gonna go over it. Um, but then I'm like, and then I like, after that, I'm like, okay, if I don't um figure this out, what like it's not gonna go well. And I
hmm,
need to figure, I need some help. And nothing's going on here, and I'm not in my platoon at this point. Like, I want to go home. And so I go to talk to somebody about it. I'm like, hey, I have these like problems, and this, this thing's happened here, and then before, and before. I need some help, and I just like I'm not being used. Like I'm just sitting like at this point, like sitting at a talk, not doing anything. Like set up the computer for the commander or some stupid like they'd find things for me to do, like go get waters and bring drinks from the whatever, and dumb things, just trying to keep me busy, like trying to figure out what's going on. And I'm like, why am I here? Like I needed to go to this treatment, and then I could be here to fight. And now I get here, and there's nothing going on. I'm like spending more time like on the internet. And this was, many years later from the first thing we talked about. But at this point, it's like Facebook and all these things, and right, and like, so I was upset about it a lot. And so yeah, like I needed to go home, and so eventually that deployment I did go home a little early.
Okay,
And and then at that point I got home and I got a lot of help, and
that's
that
good.
really changed um,
Of course.
what would keep me in the army. And so at that
Okay,
point, I would go through some treatment when I got back to Fort Hood. Um, and then like yeah, like that was a whole nother thing. Like I end up getting medevac and going to Germany, and I was in Germany for a little while, and they're like, "Hey, you're gonna go back to Fort Hood." And I just really wanted to figure out if it's my brain that was the problem, because I was like not understanding exactly what was going on. So I went to Germany, and they're like, "Hey, yeah, you have some brain problems. Like, you need to go back to Fort Hood and let them do a better assessment." So I go back to Fort Hood. Um, that was like halfway through, so it's through deployment. Um, at that point, I
mm,
didn't really care, because I was like, "Well, they had left. Like, my unit didn't want me, and I thought I was doing such a badass, and they loved me, and all these things." And then when it came down to it, they just decided that I wasn't worth anything. Um, even though, I had more experience than a lot of the guys, the NCOs in
yeah.
my platoon. So.
Um, so we're okay. So you go through your treatment and everything like that. Now you're starting to build back up, right? Like
Mhm.
you're going through it. Like, hey, I'm feeling better about myself, and I'm looking at your stuff here. And then you go to when do you go? You're going to the 25th ID. Where is that still in
That's
Fort Hood?
No, that's in Hawaii. So I go
Hawaii. Oh,
back.
so you
So I
go
go
back
back.
to Hawaii. Ooh,
Yeah.
okay.
So that was like my thing, was like I was like, hey, I really want to go. I love Hawaii. I remember like, and anybody was like a young private, like you go to your first unit,
Hmm.
it's like golden day. Like it's the first you've been away from your family. Like, I mean, I don't, like I had some really good times off duty in Hawaii. My first unit. I mean, craziness. Like,
Yeah, just
so much fun.
enjoyable.
Just so different than I'd ever like. And it wasn't the same the second time. Obviously, different, but I wanted. If you ever like have a nostalgia, like, oh, I'm gonna go back and this is how it's gonna be. Like, you think, right? So, they offered me a reenlistment. Hey, you're doing better. You want to reenlist? And I was like, sure. What options do you have? Well, you stayed at Fort Hood, and which I didn't really want to, because I was kind of felt bad about this unit. Like the unit that I really had loved, I felt like, well, this isn't really going, and I left deployment early, and now they're not gonna like me. So and then I was like, hey, I want to go, like, can I go to Hawaii? And they're like, well, no. And she's like, this lady's it's like the division reenlistment lady. She's like, hey, let's give me a minute and I'll call you and let me know. So like the next day she called me. She's like, hey, I got you a slot in Hawaii. You want to go? Yes. Okay. Go to my commander. Hey, he's like, go reenlist. He's like, it was like a Rudy commander. He's like, for sure. So I reenlist, going back to Hawaii. Took about 6 months or whatever. Unit comes back. That doesn't go well. There's a lot of people upset that I left, even though I was doing no job. That was like the hard problem. Like if I'd have left you in like hard combat, that I get it. But I'm like bringing drinks and setting computers up in the talk. Most of you guys didn't even know who I was. Like I didn't like take away from anything. Um, and so yeah, then I go to Hawaii, and like I'm like, all right, I'm gonna reset. So I like stop talking. Mostly Hawaii people don't know about a lot of that. I guess they will now, but um, yeah, like reset. I'm gonna go to Hawaii. I'm gonna just be the NCO that I know I can be. Um, and then promotable. Like before I left for Hood, they said at board I'm a promotable staff sergeant. Points and everything kind of crazy at this point. The housing market crashed. Everything happened. A lot of people joined the army at this point, and so points were crazy. So I couldn't get promoted. I'm like livid. I'm like, I've been in the army for a long time. I should be a staff sergeant by this. It's crazy. So I get to Hawaii, do some training, um, and loving it. Right, I get back, like I remember like the first day getting back to Hawaii. Um, at this point, I'm like have money. I'm not a like broke ass private, so I get to like rent a car and go to the beach, and I get to show people. Right, I spent 4 years living in this place before I know about it. So I'm in reception, hanging out with some guys, just loving it. Um, going to the beach, um, all that kind of stuff. Uh, really enjoying being in Hawaii. Um, get to my unit, love the unit. Unit's awesome. Um, but like a month or so, I get into the unit. They're like, "Hey, you got to go to the next NCO course, which is back then it was called BNOC. I don't know what they call it now, but for staff sergeant, I'm like, cool, promotable. I'm gonna get promoted soon. Cool. Um, I'm a section leader, so I go to Fort Knox again, do BNOC, blast, have the time of my life. I mean, they're like, this is a hard course. It was so easy. I was just drunk though. Like I was
Yeah.
just drinking and chilling. And I was so fun. I mean, like to me, it was so fun. I saw a lot of
You
people
feel
I
like you
knew.
finally reset, huh?
Yeah, like I'm like staff and dealing with chilling, right? Like no one says nothing. It's fun. I honestly I had the best time. There was a retired sergeant manager was like my instructor there. He was awesome. Um, I enjoy it. We go to like down to Louisville. It's a blast,
Yeah,
right?
I've been to
I
Fort Knox. It's pretty nice.
yeah. So if you've ever been to Louisville, been to like 4th Street Live, all that, it's super fun.
Yeah.
Go down there. I'm having a blast, right? Um, then I get back to my unit. Everything's cool. Go over to the Big Island, do some training. Go to NTC. Cool. Go to Afghanistan. And now this whole idea that I try to put behind me, well, my medical records show everything. And so they go to do anybody's been to the deployment to the SRP. I don't know what that's called. Like the readiness, basically like
Yeah.
the little medical check you do before you leave. And they're like, hey, you have this thing, you have a flag in your unit in your medical records because of this. And I'm like, what? So I have to get signed off for mental health. So my commander's like kind of error. Now my commander, this commander is the opposite of my own commander in saying like, hey, you're good to go. He's like, hey, you got to stay here. It's gonna be like 2 weeks. You get signed off video. Come with us. I'm like, cool. Well, in the meantime, President Obama says that excuse me, you can't have more than this amount of many people in your unit. And before you could have as many people, they're like, hey, you have 110% what you're supposed to have. Cool. Now you can only have so many. So I'm stuck. I'm like, well, this is dumb. I had to stay here to like sign off, and like seriously, it took me like a week. The lady that ran the mental health was like, did a little interview with me, and she's like, "You're good." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine. Everything is cool." And I'm at this point feeling amazing, good to go. Um, go. So that took me a little while, a few months. Then I ended up going to Afghanistan. Some people got hurt, and so they ended up coming home. And then I get to go. I get there, go to my unit. Everything's cool in Afghanistan. Kind of in the they're in an area called Shinwar. It's I guess it'd be like east of Jalalabad.
Hmm.
Bin Laden had just been killed, all that kind of stuff. Cool, we're there. Um, that I mean, that was probably like one of my favorite units. Has a really good NCO still that still hang out today. Um, guy that I worked with is a sergeant major now. He's killing it. And um, yeah, I mean, deployment was it was rough, but for a lot of guys, and to me, it wasn't like that big a deal. Like I didn't really do a lot as much. I worked in a platoon, and then first time I was like, hey, I need you to run the talk. You're like an experienced NCO. I need somebody to work in here, and we'll use you as needed. So I would just kind of hang out. Didn't have like a super job for me. Um, they would do like big missions. They'd be like, hey, we're gonna. I was kind of like they knew that they didn't have a job for me like per se. They wanted some other people to get some experience. So they're like, hey, when things go down, we didn't want you. So missions would go, they would come into the talk and they were like, hey, get your kit, we're going. I need to go on this raid. I need to go on this raid and do this because they knew and they knew what I was doing. So it's kind of how that deployment that in Afghanistan. Um,
Yeah.
I
Do you?
didn't have to do, which is cool with me because I have to work out, hang out, watch movies. And then when
Yeah.
like the actual missions, like when there wasn't boring things going, they're like, hey, grab your kit, let's go. We're gonna go kick this dude's door down. Like, all right, let's go. And we go,
Yeah.
and wreck some house.
When do you when do you realize like your army career is like coming to an end?
After that, I came home from Iraq from Afghanistan to me in 2012. And I felt good leaving. And I remember like they're like, hey, I was staff sergeant by then, and they're like, hey, you're gonna um stay. So I got to Hawaii, and I didn't have a house, and but also couldn't live in the barracks. And so they like, hey, you're gonna just stay, rent a hotel. So I'm living in Waikiki in a hotel for a few weeks, which is loving it. Right, I'm on the beach. We're like not doing anything. Like there's like a couple of formations, but the most part you're just like chilling. So every day I like check in and like, hey, all right, so I'm going to the beach. So then I'm like, a block. I'm staying in like this cool hotel, like a Marriott or Hilton. I don't know where it was, but pretty nice hotel. Like eating freaking. If you've been to Hawaii, you know what poke is. I mean, poke and drinking beer and sitting on the beach, loving life. And then it like started to hit me, like I said, earlier, right? Decompression and more things that I thought had like put behind me. It started to kick in, and I like kind of lost it, right? And that's when I first like, and I like hid that, and then I get an apartment, and then my buddy Donnie is my. I'm like, hey man, you want to get an apartment together? He's like, cool. So we get an apartment. We're living in Hawaii and Makakilo. Down the street, my other friend Joey's living, his wife and family, and so we're loving. I'm loving life, right? Everybody's home, and then everybody starts to leave, right? People are PTSing, all that. I'm gonna be in Hawaii for a while because I like had more time there. Everybody
Yeah.
else has been there before me, and so they're like leaving. And it was right around that time that I like kind of dropped off, and I was like not understanding. So then I like um I think it was like somewhere in 2012. I tried to commit suicide. Um, and everybody had left. So I'm in this apartment by myself. Um, I met my wife was my girlfriend at the time. And she had went back. Her dad had passed away, and I remember like not things weren't well for me.
Yeah.
And I was hanging out. And I remember like getting drunk and like yeah, like trying to commit suicide. And my doc, I guess apparently I texted him, and I was and I've always been cool as a doc, so I like texting doc. I'm like, hey man, and I don't remember what I said to him, but he came over, and he lived close. Like I think he lived like in the barracks at the time, and he like came 30 minutes, whatever it was, across the island to my house, and he found me like. And I was unconscious. I don't remember exactly all that. I remember waking up in the hospital at Triple R,
Yeah.
and it wasn't good. And so that was like the first. But I've been in a unit like cared for me, right? Had I been in other units, they would not have cared for me. They'd be like, "Chapter this dude out of the army. Screw this guy." But they took care of me. And that was like the lowest, one of the lowest places I'd been. Um, and rather than then, like, hey, you're gonna, I want you to move into the barracks, but my unit, like, said, took care of me. Um, so I went to some treatments, and I went to like, there was a place in Arizona that I went to for like a month, and they were really trying to help veterans. It was a terrible program. They didn't do much. You ended up getting pretty much locked into this like mental hospital, like real crazy people. And that's kind of where I guess if you want to know what the recovery kind of stories is that's really where my recovery story starts. Is that
Hmm.
I was like there, and I was really confused of like, okay, we're supposed to be this thing. They're gonna help us, but no one really shows up to work. And I've been on like they just put me on medication, right? I'm on like 10 milligrams of Klonopin a day. They're giving me Ativan. They're like like Prozac, like all these things, right? And then I'm in chronic pain, so they're giving me oxys, like so it's not a lot of drugs. I'm like doped up. Um, and so then so I go to this place. I kind of get off some of the pills. I'm off the like Klonopin. I go through like super bad withdrawals, that stuff like that. Try to get my life together. Really confused of what the heck is going on. This is when I realized like I'm gonna probably not be in the army, but I didn't want that. I was like, I don't want to get med boarded from the army. I come home from there. I get rid of my apartment. I move into the barracks. My girlfriend, it's gone. Um, I had a dog with her and all this stuff, and I had to like, get rid of this dog. Like, so I had nothing. So I'm like living in this barracks room with people I don't know. Most of my unit had PCS by that point. A couple of guys in who I was, but they were like soldiers. At this point, they were like young NCOs, maybe like sergeants. But that when they knew me, they were like specialist or stuff like that. And so it's like it was weird. So I have a new unit, but my new sergeant major knew who I was. New first sergeant knew who I was, and they took care of me. And they were like, we're not gonna let, and that was awesome. I had a good colonel, all that, doing through med board. Took me about 18 months to do. So I'm just like hanging out. And that they like put me back on these pills because I didn't know what to do. And I'm in pain, and so I'm like all hopped up on drugs, all on these like oxys and all this. And I pretty much using it
Yeah.
just to like kind of disassociate um from the whole thing. And yeah, so I go through that, and then I get down. So I get towards the end of med board. They're like, "Hey, you're gonna get out." I'm like, "Well, I can't get out on all these medications." So they send me to a rehab in California to get off all these meds, so I can leave the army. And then I get out for uh, in the beginning of, I guess it'd be like like 2014. So about 2014, and I'm like getting out.
Yeah.
So
How did
I don't
you
know what else you want to know.
so, do you feel like the TBI, and then obviously you had a lot of like the PTSD, that the TBI is the from the pain, right? Like that's all the pain you're experiencing and everything like that?
Yeah, I would say some of that is from that. Some of it is from, yeah, some of it's from some of the like pain is from like the compression from your back from wearing all the gear and then getting blown up and then tossed around vehicles and all that kind of
Right.
stuff. So you have like a lot of lower back pain. And then
Yeah.
once it starts hurting and you're in that like state, you don't really exercise it, right? And so like where you normally like where I like learned later was to like do exercises to like strengthen around some of those like muscles that are weak. At the time I didn't really in the like the mental state to do any of that kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, you kind of were just like we talked about the decompression, and it's kind of like, dude, you cope. They don't really give you the tools, right, to like cope and to deal with things. You kind of just deal with it in your own way until you actually get professional help. You know what I mean?
For sure.
And
Yeah.
then
It took me, I mean, what, here 2025? I think it took me a better part of 10 years to figure it
yeah.
out. If you want to go into
So
that half of this, that's the first half is like my military service, but if you want
so
to talk about recovery,
how are you feeling now?
I'm doing a lot better. Be honest with you, I was a little nervous about talking about all that stuff. I haven't really shared that story in a long time. I have jokes. There's other parts like the other parts like, and what I didn't want to do is have a Tim Kennedy moment and like start sharing war stories, and then somebody come on here and be like, "Well, I remember it like this," and he's lying. So I've been kind of, that's why some of the vagueness of some of my stories has been from that, is that I don't want another veteran to be like, "Well, it really happened." Like, 'cause there's things I don't remember. Some of the stuff is 20 years ago, and
Right. Yeah.
and it's not that important to me to go, well, I did this and whatever, right? I don't care about the war stories as much as I care about people understanding like this is the timeline of kind of what happened, um, in a generalization, um, and then how did I get better? How did I get
Yeah.
to the point where I am now? Because I'm in a decent place. Not that that's no. Do I have still have some problems? Sure. Uh, um, it's learning to cope with it.
Yeah.
And
And that's what I
yeah.
that's what I want this show to be. It's not about, and I think we talked about it earlier. It's not about cool stories and stuff. It's about showing how we make it back, dude. And I don't know if you've seen some of my posts. I always put hashtag we
Yeah.
make it, and and
Yeah.
because that's true, man. Like, the recovery process is probably the most important part than all the combat that we did, man. Like, you got to live for something. You got to live for somebody. You got to live for yourself. And you sharing your story takes a lot of courage, dude. I know it's hard to talk about it, and it's hard because you feel vulnerable, right? And it's not easy, man. The everything that we've been through, you've been through, it's not an easy process for any human being.
Hmm. And we
And
could go over if you have like a little bit of time if you want to. I know you probably have to edit some of this, but um, some of the recovery. I would say, yeah, finding something that like you can wrap yourself into. I do jitsu now. I do stuff with kids, and finding something that like is where you want to be, like right, like this room that I'm in. This is we do resell. So this is my wife's so there's some good lighting in here. We take pictures for stuff we resell, and um, that's been like a thing. Like, but getting to like it was hard. A lot of times, like right, like you're like this person like, in your mind, like you spent all this years, it's been more than a decade, right, being a soldier. It's like you think and some of it's like I don't know how to explain it. Like you really like you know what you went through, and it's like when you're like you're not that person to other people when you're out. It's hard. It's a hard thing to
Yeah.
cope with. Like right, you're like I'm this person.
Yeah.
I know that I've been to these places. I've seen such and such things. I feel like I should. And there's so much recognition. It's like don't downplay, you know. And then
Yeah, I think I know what you're
like
talking
but
about. Like people just don't give a fuck, right? Like you're like, damn man, I'm this person. I did this, like, and then you're like,
mhm.
the civilian people are like, dude, I don't care. I just got the new iPhone. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
and even in the veteran community, there's just so much like, and like buddy fucking, right? There's so many Blue Falcons, like, and there's people that didn't go to war, right? And then they
yeah,
want
they
to
make you feel
like
like
be
shit.
that. They want to be that. They're like they want to be in that crowd, and so they're gonna do whatever they can to like kind of like nudge you out. If they don't feel like you're that person, or you're not like or you don't care as much, they're like, well, And so I did that. Like like when I got out, I just want to jump right into the veteran. Like I'm gonna jump in the veteran community. I'm gonna do these things, and I'm gonna help veterans. And I'm gonna do these things, and I like try to join a motorcycle club, and I did that for a while. And I'm not trying to have drama with that club, so I can say too much about them. But I did that. There's some drama. There's some really awesome, amazing people that I met there. They're amazing. They're a national club now. They're amazing. And I really want to spend my money because I love riding motorcycles, and I like that kind of stuff, and I still do that stuff now. But like, yeah, like I had such a sour taste. Like I did that, and then getting off medication, I got really big into cannabis. So it was like really when that was a big thing, and that in the last 10 years, kind of like fizzled out. Now people are doing like
That's
psychedelics or whatever they do now.
that's
But
probably why you're in Colorado,
yeah, that's why I moved to Colorado. To be honest, I moved to
huh?
Colorado because at the time, this is like, so I got out, I lived in Texas, joined a motorcycle club. A good group of guys who really were trying. That club was just kind of getting started as far as like expanding. They were from a Boston area. They were really cool dudes, awesome guys. A lot of it was me. I was trying to like fit in. I got into doing some drugs for a short period of time, and that was bad. And I got myself out like pretty quickly. It was like, okay, this is not gonna work. Got off of that, got clean, did all that. But yeah, like it was a long recovery, right? You have to like deal with. It took me a long time to like to be okay with me and be
Damn,
okay that
that's
people aren't gonna know who I was,
dude,
and
that's deep,
that is
bro.
okay. That like you have to be okay with you at the end of the day.
Yeah,
Um, and you can't like you don't know what other people are. You're right. They think they're going through the same thing, and they want to like scoop their part of this whole thing. And I think, and then there's guys like I said, like just this like there's one guy that I knew in particular that I got no beef with. At the time we whatever, like we didn't end up on good terms, but like think about it later, like he was just trying to find his place in that community as well.
yeah,
And I think his time got cut short in the in his he did in military. And good dude, heart in the right place. Deliverance not always the best. Same for me. I can't say I was any better. Um,
yeah.
and the maturity
Oh,
definitely not for me, not there. And so like getting to find that whole thing, and then yeah, the whole like I got into cannabis. I moved out here to grow weed, and I did that for a long time. I don't do that
mhm.
anymore, but that got me off all the medication. If I'm honest with you, and that was the best thing. Like getting all the medication that was just dumbing me down
Yeah,
was the worst thing ever. And then I used cannabis for a long time, like and now, like I said, I don't, and that it really helps to get off of that. But yeah, there's a
yeah.
lot of things that to do. But
I liked what you said, dude. You got to be okay with you. That's very important, and I feel like that's something that a lot of people when they get out or where they end their career kind of short, they need to be okay with you, man. Like with yourself. Like this is me, and I didn't get to do some things. Like I said on a post one time, I was like, somebody's always done more than you, somebody's always done less than you. And, you know, it's important to kind of just like get over yourself, like, hey, I'm not going to argue with you. I'm not going to put myself in that situation or some stuff like that. And yeah, man, your story's deep, dude. I mean, it's really hard, like opening up like that, feeling vulnerable. And I really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, I appreciate you letting me share my story. And like I said, if you guys maybe wants to know more, want to do later, we talk about the second half of the recovery. I know it's been a while. I've been on here for a while, so people are probably
Wow.
tired of.
It's not
They're
live.
like, "This guy,
You're
shut
good.
up."
No, it's not
But
live, bro. So, but not Dustin. Do you have any questions for me or anything like that?
no, man. I just appreciate what you're doing, and keep doing it. Like I said, if you want a second part of this, if you ever want any support, I think what you're doing is awesome. And so I love to support you, and like I said, if you need anything, let me know. I will help you out if you need some. And I mean, any like whatever it is. If we're I think you live like Texas or something like that. If I was to guess, but
Oh, damn. Okay.
I know.
Yeah.
And you can edit that part out. But
No, you're good.
between me, uh, um, yeah, I just it's a good. What you're doing is amazing. And like I said, if I'm doing, I can help you. Instead of reinventing the wheel, so I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do this podcast, and I'm just gonna do another one. I'd rather just support somebody doing it,
Hmm.
and whatever that is. If I can lead people to help you get on here, if there's any way I can help you do whatever, like if I'm in Texas or wherever you are, you don't have to say anything. I'll help you build out a studio. We'll still like set up some stuff, and we'll get it like set up and right. Like I want them to be successful, and I think regular people. I think that's where like in the veteran community too. You don't want to like be the fucking star. Like I don't
Right.
necessarily need to be the star. Like I'll be the star if I need to, but at the same time, if I can just like carry the fucking bag, right? Like if I can like same like do with my gym. Like like telling them like, hey, if I can come in here and freaking carries the freaking bag or like sweep the floor, like let me know. Like let me. This is like my gym has done so much for me. Like as far as getting my like mental health and like everything back, like as far as jits and just working out and all that stuff. Like bro, let's sweep the floor. Like, I don't need to be anybody. I don't care about that stuff. Like, this idea that I need to be some superstar is over. Like, I know that's not the path I want to be on. And that if I need to like sweep the floor or like carry like a rock or like set the lights up or whatever it is, right? Like anything. That's what I want to do. And so what we're doing is amazing. And I just want you to know that you got my support. And I know you have a
Yeah.
lot of support. And there's a lot of guys that follow you that are gonna see this now that I know. Um, and so yeah, hopefully they like the content and so if there's any way I can do to help you, just let me know.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Dustin. Dustin Peters, ladies and gentlemen.
Appreciate you guys.
Thank you so much for watching this episode. If you already made it this far, go ahead and hit that subscription button or follow if you're on Spotify. Share this content. Once again, hit us up on all major socials. I'm always looking for guests. Thank you so much for checking it out. We drop a new episode every Wednesday. And with that, we'll catch you on the next episode.